complete view of the system.
And we know they have back to our listener. What's up?
Yes, and also PowerPoint and documentation that comes from the textbook of the class.
That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, so it's not just the video and audio, but also all the class materials.
Right, like the PowerPoint presentations and the textbook info. That's a lot of stuff.
Exactly, and that really adds to all of those files that we were discussing.
So they're not, go for it.
Including a test bank with quizzes and midterm and final tests, both in printed format and also in online format in files with the tutorials.
Okay, that's a fantastic detail. Thanks for adding that in.
Yeah, so it's not just the PowerPoints and textbooks, but tests too.
Right, you're saying that there are quizzes, midterms, and finals, both printed and online.
Wow, that's a whole other layer, like a complete learning package.
And that really does help us understand why they need all that storage.
So that 8 terabyte hard drive, that's not just for the video.
That's a really great point. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, so it's not just the videos and the presentations, but tests too.
Exactly, and that's in both printed and online formats, which is so interesting.
Right, like quizzes, midterms, and even final tests. That's a lot of files.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, it shows how much data they're managing.
Yeah, and it all has to be stored somewhere, right?
Right, it's for everything, all the PowerPoints, documents, and those tests.
And that really puts it in...
Oh, go for it.
Also, the textbook itself is a printed form as well as PDF files, and all these PDF files are broken by the chapter number. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and all of them are stored locally and in an LMS, learning management system like Blackboard.com.
Okay, wow, that's a really great detail. Thanks for adding that in.
Yeah, so it's not just the tests, but the textbook is also in both print and PDF. Wow.
Right, and those PDF files are organized by chapter. That's really helpful.
And you're saying those are stored both locally and also on an LMS, like Blackboard. That's key.
So it's like a complete digital and physical library for the students.
And that really does add to that overall storage that we were discussing before, right?
Yeah, and they're separating the files by device, which is really smart and very organized.
Well, this also connects back to the software they're using, like that OBS software, right?
Right, to manage all those live streams and capture everything, and all of the course materials, too.
And it's not just for recording, but also how they're structuring the class.
And it is also how they're organizing all the different content, too, like the files you mentioned.
Yeah, so we've talked about all the devices, the mobile cart, the storage, the tests, and textbooks. Oh, yeah,
Also, OBS is not only a recording software, it is also a streaming server. So if they want, they can stream from a local host instead of using...
Okay, that's a really great point. Thanks for clarifying that for us.
Yeah, so it's not just for recording, but OBS is also a streaming server, too. That's key.
Exactly, and that really puts things into perspective. It's a dual-purpose tool.
Okay, so it's not just capturing the video, but it's also sending it out, too.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, it shows how they're managing the live stream.
Yeah, like it's not just recording, it's actually broadcasting it live, too. Okay, that's a really great point. Thanks for chiming in.
Yeah, so you're saying that OBS isn't just for recording, it's also a streaming server, too.
Okay, so it's not just capturing video, it's also sending it out to the world.
Exactly, and that really does change how we have to think about their workflow, right?
Right, it's like it's handling both ends, the recording and the broadcasting.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that makes OBS a really key piece of software in this Cara. And that really ties into all the different devices and cameras we were talking about earlier.
Right, and that's a great way to think about it with the laptop, too, and the class materials.
So it's handling the recording and also the live podcasts.
Yeah, and with that in mind, we can unpack the rest of it, including the textbooks and tests.
Okay, so OBS is a streaming server and a recording software.
Yeah, and that really helps us understand how they're getting all that video to YouTube. Yeah, it's not just for recording the class, it's handling the live stream too.
And it also means they can use OBS for multiple purposes at the same time, right?
And it makes sense how they are using a PC to be able to run OBS in all of their systems.
Exactly. That PC on the tray is really important for all of this,
Okay, so with that new information in mind, let's keep going.
So that really helps us understand the full picture of how everything works together. And it also explains why they need that laptop to run everything else, too.
Right, like it's all running at the same time, capturing and streaming and everything.
Yeah, so they are using OBS to broadcast the video and a PC to manage everything else.
And all of that ties into that 8 terabyte external hard drive, too, right?
Exactly, and it really does connect to the tests and the textbooks, too.
Okay, so OBS is managing all the video feeds and streaming them live. Yeah, it's like the PC's the control center, and OBS is the main tool.
Right, and if we think about the videos, we know they're using a lot of cameras.
And all of that's happening in real time, or some of it's pre-recorded, right?
And we also know that the storage is separated by device, which is so smart.
Right, and it all gets moved to that external hard drive later, that SSD too.
And it's not just the video, but also the tests, the textbooks, all these course materials. And that clarifies how they're getting all of that footage online in real time.
Yeah, and with that in mind, let's keep going and unpack all of that.
So with OBS as a streaming server and a recording software, that really changes things.
Right, and it also explains how they're managing all of those different video files and textbooks too.
And it is all part of that whole portable system that they use for field trips and those class materials.
And with the PC, they can manage all the tests and the textbook PDF files too. Yeah, and that really gives us a clear picture of how much data they are dealing with.
And we know that OBS is a big part of all this, handling the recording and also the streaming.
Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into how they're using OBS and what that looks like.
Well, from the transcripts, we see that they are creating multiple YouTube windows, right?
Yeah, it's like separate ones for different types of video, like we talked about.
And that really makes you think about how they're using OBS to manage all of this. Yeah, so OBS is managing the video, and the PC is managing all the files and class materials.
So that gives us a much clearer picture of the whole process, right?
Okay, so let's dive in. With that new information in mind, what does it all mean?
Well, it all comes together with those live streams, right? That's all going up to YouTube.
Right, it's not just about the live class, but also the whole process, all the devices too.
So we have a class that's in person and online, and it's all recorded, including the tests and the textbook. Yeah, they might be using it to switch between the cameras.
Right, and maybe to add graphics or those pre-recorded elements to the live show too.
So it's not just capturing, but also mixing and creating a live experience.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really shows the level of control they have.
And it makes you wonder what other types of software they're using too, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something we should unpack further.
Like, what do they use for editing or to create the presentations?
Well, the files are all stored on the PC temporarily and then moved to the external drive.
And all of that is happening while they are teaching and also documenting.
So OBS is a key piece of the puzzle for streaming, but not the only piece of software.
Right, it's part of the whole system alongside PowerPoint and other things too.
And it really highlights that they're using a mix of software and hardware. Yeah, so it's a lot of data to store temporarily, including all the different tests and textbook files too.
And that's why they need that external hard drive as well, that's for sure.
Exactly, and if we connect that to the bigger picture, it's all for a smooth learning experience and those tests and textbooks.
Right, and it makes you wonder how they keep it all organized, all the class files and all the live stuff too.
Well, let's just unpack what we know about the software, right?
Yeah, so they use OBS for broadcasting and a PC for other software.
And it is all part of that portable system we were discussing, so many angles and perspectives.
And all of that's being captured with those different cameras and the laptop for everything, right?
And it's
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, in addition to that, they are using an LMS, learning management system, such as Blackboard.com, where all the information is stored on a server.
Oh, okay, that's fantastic. Thanks for adding that extra piece of information.
Yeah, so it's not just stored on their PC, but also on an LMS. That's great to know.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, an LMS really changes how we see things.
Right, like Blackboard is where the students access the course materials too.
Exactly. So it's a central hub for everything related to the class on a server.
It's like a virtual classroom with all the tests, the textbooks, and the videos.
Well, let's integrate that into everything we've already talked about.
Yeah, and it's all part of that mobile setup they're using for a classroom and also the field trips too.
Okay, so let's keep all that in mind and continue to unpack what is happening.
Right, and if we think back to the beginning, the files are date stamped and all organized too.
And now we know why with all that data that they are collecting from all of those devices, right?
Yeah, and it's all to give the best experience to the students, which is incredible.
Okay, so let's zoom in on OBS a little more. What else does it do?
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that's so important, especially for the tests and the textbooks.
It's really impressive how they've set everything up.
Yeah, and you were saying all the files are stored temporarily before moving to that external hard drive.
And all of the test files and the documents, too, that you were talking about? Wow.
So now we know it is not just videos, but also all the course materials, too, the tests and textbooks.
And that makes a lot of sense with everything that we've talked about today. So much data, including tests and books.
Well, we know it's a streaming server and a recording software, right?
And that it's used to combine all of those different video feeds.
So it's not just one thing, but all of those together.
And it's likely that they're using OBS to switch between cameras and all those other things, too.
It's like a control panel for the live broadcast on that laptop, all in one.
Exactly, and it makes sense how they need a whole PC for all of that as well.
And that also highlights the sheer amount of preparation that goes into the classes, right?
Yeah, it's all so complex, and it is all connected, including tests and all those PDF files.
So let's keep going. We've talked about all the tech and tests and the textbooks too.
And also how they're capturing everything, and now about storage too, and those textbook files too.
And it really all comes together for the field trip.
Right, with all those devices, and that mobile cart, and the PC too, and the textbook too.
Yeah, so they are recording and broadcasting at the same time using OBS.
And that's a really big job if we really think about all of it.
Right, and if we think about the field trips, they're doing all of that on the go.
So they're moving the mobile cart, and they are also managing all of that video too.
It's like they're directing a live show.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Yes, yeah, they can add an additional luggage if the mobile cart is not sufficient. They can mount on top of the mobile cart a roller, a computer roller with a handle, and bundle both handles together, making it a more stable clamp wise, so the clamp cannot move when clamped to double handles of both the base mobile cart and the computer roller on top of it. Both handles are extended and linked together with additional spring-loaded clamps.
Wow, that's a really interesting solution. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that's really resourceful, using additional luggage and clamps.
Okay, so if the cart isn't enough, they can add another roller. That's great.
Exactly, and they can even bundle the handles together for extra stability.
It's like building a multi-tiered mobile workstation, right?
It makes sense how adaptable that portable setup is then. Great point.
And like you're saying, they make it even more stable with more clamps.
You're helping us to really get a sense of the video setup too,
Right, and they're using all of this tech during the field trip.
and the way they make sure it all stays in place with those rubber bands.
Okay, so it seems like the...
Hey, yeah, what's up?
Also in the classroom, it has to be rolled into a classroom, assembled quickly and used, and then at the end of the class, being folded quickly and taken out of the classroom to enable another professor or another instructor to come in and start teaching their class.